All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is for Women's Month, and I am super excited about this presentation about what's going to happen. Um, I've looked at several different presentations in the past about, and we've actually performed them on different of things for women and women empowerment and so forth. But this one, I wanted to make sure really hit home as we see more women going to college than men, we see so much success with women. It's a different level of preparation and planning that needs to happen for wealth management. And today, I have Joy Edwards here, attorney extraordinaire. Um, and we're gonna so Rutgers just hired a new coach, made me think about you because I know you attended there. But um we're gonna talk about and go through before and after the marriage, how to plan, things to think about, maybe even if you're already in it, what can you do differently? So without further ado, Joy Edwards.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Glenn, celebration of Women's History Month. You're the only man on the screen. We'll cut you some slack and let you join the party and be a part of the party um, as we move forward with this. So, I mean, you've given a little bit of my history. And so, as much as I know about sports, is ball. The ball goes there, somebody kicks it somewhere into a net, over a field post, something like that. Although you never know it because tomorrow we're doing something with the Braves in Atlanta, and then on Saturday I'm going to soccer. The U.S. team is playing Belgium, so it's like I'm a whole sports fan. I just really love the experience. So no, I don't know anything about what Rutgers is doing, but cheers. So a little bit about me. Our law firm, the Edwards Law Group, is based in Atlanta. And I started the law firm because I was working at another law firm and I saw that I could do things differently, come at things with a different perspective. Um, Compassionate, but not. I don't let people sit in self-pity for a whole lot of time. Certainly spaces to do that, but it was about empowering people to take command of their future. And as this topic is so on point with like that whole concept with how we move forward as women in our marriages or not in our marriages, how we can plan for that on the front end, during, and after. So happy to speak on that topic. And we'll get the deck going in a minute and we'll jump in.
And one of the things I'd like to get your thoughts about, we're going to talk about some very emotional items. How do you guide people to work with through their emotions so that we can get to ultimately the facts and what needs to happen so people can be prepared?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of times, like the type A women who come into us, especially, they're so used to like putting those emotions like behind them somewhere and like focusing on the numbers. But what we found in this work is that if you don't tell them that it's okay and make space for them to like have their emotions, they're going to break down at some point during it. So, one of the first things we ask is, do you have a therapist? If you don't, we have resources for you. If you do, you need to tell your therapist that you're working through this and like work through it with them. A lot of times people, when they're talking to me, like on video or in office, they will start crying out of nowhere. And I will just simply sit there and let them have their space to cry. Um, we're human and it's life, and like that's a big part of it. But with our legal team, what we say and we take pride in is like we do the legal stuff and we give you the space to be the human being, the mother, the wife, the whatever. We give you the space to be the human, and don't worry about it. Like we want you to do that. Just know that we have the legal stuff in the back, and when it's time, we're going to pull you back and say, okay, now we have to do this. And let's not react on emotion. If you want to have your emotion, have it, say all the things you want to say to us. And then we're going to pull you back and center on this is the task. So let's try to move through this. So we're going to cover like four main topics today. The first one being the truth about marriage. Like it's not just all weddings, unicorns, rainbows, all that good stuff. There's the legal stuff that goes with it. And we'll talk about the fact that if you didn't make a plan, if you don't make a plan, the court is going to make a plan for you, as with everything. You only think things are undecided. If you don't have the decision, if you don't make the decision, someone else will make it for you. And then what the risks are to you for not having a plan. And then finally, financial power and how that equals personal power, even if it's just in your mind, those things, how they translate moving forward. Okay. So the first thing, and a lot of people don't necessarily think about this part of it. Like they think about the wedding and the flowers and the presents and the honeymoon and all of that stuff. But as an attorney doing family law, marriage is actually a legal contract. And as with all contracts, there are certain obligations and responsibilities, and there are detriments if you don't live up to that, right? A lot of people think that because we do divorces, we, must be these like cold cutthroat people. I love me a wedding. One of the things that we say all the time is that we love love. But just because you're in love and just because you're planning your future together doesn't mean you have to go into it with your eyes closed. And it doesn't mean that you have to give up your independence and everything that goes along with it. So many people spend time like planning the wedding, but they actually don't take the time to think about what happens after the wedding, right? When you are just living your life, when you are amassing things for your future, be it assets, be it debts, like all of those things.
Preach. Oh, sorry.
It's fine. And then, something happens and they're kind of left going, wait, what? I can't tell you how many times we have done divorces for people who have spent tens of thousands of dollars. I think the highest one was that I can think of in the recent future was they spent almost $250,000 on the wedding, and the marriage itself did not last a year. So 6 months into the wedding, we were getting them divorced, and we got them divorced just shy of their anniversary because that's what my client wanted. But guess what they were fighting about? The $250,000 that they had spent on the wedding, and they didn't have the foresight to think, all right, well, let's get a prenup in place, or let's talk about like how we like literally divide stuff when things are good. So it's super important to like not just do the lovey-dovey stuff, the happy stuff, but the stuff before and after.
So I've got to ask you a question about that. People, I think the maybe a misconception, but I want to get your thoughts and I want to speak for you. Um, you hear the word prenup, and the thought may be, oh, well, you just don't believe in the marriage, or it's a bad thing. You don't believe in me, or
Yeah.
it's not fair. And maybe you're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to make sure that's one of the questions that we've received to hear.
Yes.
Hear your thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you. I believe the next slide is speaking to that. But it used to be that prenups were considered to be a dirty word, right? Like folks, and still, folks are still scared to like broach it. When those zeros behind their income start adding up, it's an easier conversation for the person who has more zeros than the person without the zeros. But we actually did a webinar last month where a former client was our guest speaker, and he came on to speak about prenups. And when I did my closing call with him, he said to me, so we handled two cases for him that happened simultaneously, the divorce and something else. And he said, I wish someone had told me about prenups before I got married because I knew of prenups, but I thought it was for people who had like a whole lot of money. And I didn't even have $1 million. And I was like, nope, prenups, like we can do a prenup to protect you from having to take on your spouse's debt. You know, we can, the prenup can contract for everything that is financial outside of child support. So it can take care of how assets are divided. It can take care of how debts are divided. It can take care of businesses, how those go into place. And it's no longer a dirty word. And it's very importantly for many of us, it is no longer, or it should no longer be thought of as only something for the super wealthy, because this particular gentleman, I think he was like a little bit over 500,000 with his assets. And because he didn't have a prenup, because he didn't take the time to speak to an attorney before to plan, like the slide said, if you don't decide, the court will decide for you. He commingled some of his separate property that he had before into marital property, and then ended up having to share what was a portion of his inheritance with his wife, now ex-wife. The fun thing about prenups, and not a lot of people look at it that way, but the fun thing is if you sit with your significant other before you get married and say, look, things are good between us. We are about to walk into this marriage. We love each other. We're happy. This is what we want to see happen if we separate. Because by the time you're ready to separate, if you don't have those in place, there is nothing that other person says that's right, right? Everybody has, drawn their swords and pulled back their triggers and they're ready to go. So important to at least have the conversation. And then a lot of people don't know about post-nups. So the post-nup happens after you're married. We try to do those as soon as possible after the marriage takes place. But transparently, we've done them in marriages that are 10, 15 years, 20 years, old. But the postnup is also what happens in the event of divorce. Um, a lot of times for the postnups that are years after the marriage has occurred, it's because one of the spouses has done something to break the trust of the other spouse. And they've decided, we're going to do this. It gives security to the other person to say, look, it's usually somebody's cheated, right? It's either they've like cheated in the sense that we all know with another sexual partner, or they've cheated on the financial trust that spouses have, where they've spent or secreted away money. But usually those are the ways postnups come up, and people try to do it to save the marriage. Um, However much folks think they're about to spend on a prenup or a postnup, which for us is thousands of dollars. We're talking somewhere between $4,000 or $5,000 and up, depending on the size of the estate. I guarantee you it is cheaper than you are going to spend on a litigated divorce case.
So when you think about a litigated divorce case for someone, and most of the people who will be hearing this have, net worths over $1 million. What numbers might they be facing, even though they may think they'll never get divorced, but it happens? What numbers have you seen when you look at if you combine both parties?
Yeah, so if you're looking at a marital estate of over $1 million and it's contested, if we're just dealing with dividing assets, probably 20, $30,000. If you're dealing with custody of the kids, double that amount. If folks feel like very passionately about, I should have custody and you shouldn't, and we're fighting about money, between the two of them, they're spending upwards of 60,000, which is, in my opinion, even if that's the way we make our living, right? In my opinion, it's a waste of money if you could have protected some of that on the front end when you didn't like dislike each other to the point that you're getting divorced. And people always find something to fight about. If the person feels slighted in any way, they're going to fight. Okay, the next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about things that you could actually stand to lose if you don't put a plan in place as far as your finances are concerned. Legally, we hear a lot about equitable, right? And a lot of people think of that as equal. And so they think, oh, I don't need to have a plan in place because everything is equitably divided. That means I get 50%, the other person gets 50%. Equitable doesn't mean 50-50. It's it means what the court thinks is fair. And that might not be 50-50, that might be 60-40. And if you didn't plan properly, right, so many people, especially if they're not just starting out, folks already have stuff. They've already got assets that they've accumulated. Sometimes they have a plan for how they're moving forward. And without planning for going into this marriage or during the marriage, as we relax into the humanity of life and marriage, folks start commingling things. And it usually starts small and then it becomes, oh, let's just buy this house together. You have more liquid cash. Okay, so you put down the $100,000 down payment. And it's probably easier if you just put it in the joint account so that we can both do things like easily when we need to, right? And then before you know it, you're getting divorced, and that 100,000 that was your separate was put in a joint account, and then purchase the house that's in both your names, and that 100,000 is now subject to the judge saying something like, "Well, I know it was yours previously. It wasn't yours when it purchased this property, so now we have to talk about dividing it." The other thing that folks don't necessarily think about is that alimony is not automatic. I'll tell you, a lot of men have a hard time asking for alimony. They're like, oh, I'm a man. I don't need to ask for alimony. Well, guess what? You hire the right lawyer and you don't have to do the ask. The attorney will do the ask for you. So, yay, you. But that is one of the big things that we can help protect against or for in a prenup or even a postnup. Something as simple as you're starting your marriage, there are no children. A lot of times when folks have kids, somebody steps away a bit or back a bit from their job if they can afford it. And then you don't have any documents, you haven't planned or anything like that. And before you know it, you're 10 years into the marriage. And a lot of times it's the women, but you're 10 years into the marriage, your career has taken a back seat, and you're getting divorced, and there's no provisions made for spousal support. You haven't been able to contribute to your retirement because you're just not earning that much. Um, and you haven't taken the step to talk to someone like you, Glenn, to say, all right, as a family, this is what our structure is going to look like for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. How do we make sure that if something happens, this wife is taken care of or this husband is taken care of? Because all of those things can absolutely be prenup and postnup aside, like all of those things can be taken care of with your plan for your financial future.
You know
With
what? Let me stop you. You brought up an excellent point. Because someone recommends a prenup or a postnup doesn't mean I want to have everything and you have nothing. It doesn't mean that. And I think you're really speaking to that. So I just had to stop and say that. Am I saying that right? So
yeah,
if I
it,
want a prenup, it doesn't mean that I want someone to have nothing and I have everything.
absolutely. And it's very rare that we write prenups where it's like, you get nothing, I get everything. It might very well be the prenup or postnup says everything that I had before is mine and everything that you had before is yours. But what we see more often is exactly something along those lines. However, everything we amass together, this is how we're going to divide it. And for people with higher net worth, and there was a couple in the news not terribly long ago, sometimes just the ask of, I want to have a prenup, and when the other person refuses to sign it, let's talk about red flags of, this is not a marriage I want to move forward in, right? Um,
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about and agreed. It's just like any business relationship when you have a contract, it makes sense to have an exit strategy in case things don't work out.
Right. And it's not saying things won't work out. It's just saying, hey, if it doesn't work out, we both know what's going to happen. Right. A lot of times, Glenn, where we see the prenups, I would call it like take all the things away is allegations. It's spaces where folks are found to have committed infidelity. That's where punitive stuff often comes in the prenups and postnups. Outside of that, most of them are fair.
Yeah, it's like disability insurance. No one is planning to go and become disabled, but if it happens, then now you have covered something that can protect you and ultimately protect your family. You brought up a point of 20 to 30 to 40, $50,000 in fees. That can cripple uh, someone's finances. You know, they could wipe out all their savings and plus some, and now it's already an emotional time. It could be you can make even worse decisions. So getting this done up front just makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does. Um, so financial independence and what that looks like. I think a lot of folks think that, you know, again, we're talking about women, but a lot of women think that if they hold on to anything separate, if everything is not commingled and things along those lines, that they're not truly in the marriage. And it has to do with, for a lot of women, how we are raised, right? But I know you've got stories of your family and past of how that has, you know, shown up and how it has helped shape what you do now. And certainly, from my side, my mother, I never saw that woman balance a checkbook. I knew she had one. I don't even know she knew where it was. It was not something that was talked about. And I know on a personal level, like when my dad passed away, like, I mean, he left my mom well taken care of, but like, she knew nothing about what the finances were because that was his role, in the marriage. And let me just tell you, my mother has a master's, a doctorate degree, assistant principal. Like, she was not a stay-at-home mom type person, very educated, just didn't have that mindset. Um, and it's very interesting to me and probably to her to raise a daughter who's telling people, hey, you need to know what the money is and what the finances are, and like put a plan in place for how you move through your future and what, what every stage of your life looks like. But having people like you, Glenn, to be able to say, okay, not only are we going to take care of it on this generational level, but the next step for our kids, right? So our kids aren't repeating what grandma did. I think that's so important because a lot of times when we go through the divorces and we sit with our clients, they don't know the women. A lot of times they don't know where all the accounts are, what's in the retirement. They don't even know if they have a retirement. Um, and so one of the first and most basic things we do is say, pull your credit report, and we will ask the other side if they don't provide it to us. We'll have their attorney provide us with their credit report because that's how we can see what some of the financial things within the family dynamics are. Because at the end of the day, that's your life. If you can't afford to live, to eat, you're just always going to be in a tailspin. So, um, smart women prepare early is one of the things that we preach and try to teach, right? We've got some younger folks in our office, and we tell them all the time, you have to be independent. You have to take care of your like finances. We met with one of the financial planners that administers to our firm. And I was telling the story of I was out of law school. I think I was making a whopping $30,000 a year. It's not a month, a year. And the financial planner that I met with said, it's okay to start small with $20 a month. And, in my mind, $20 out of my 30,000 gross a year, I was like, well, how am I going to live? And to see how that $20 a month, because eventually you don't feel it, right? And then you add, you pick more and more, and to see how it's grown is just incredible. So it's never too early. It's never too early to start. Like putting it away, invest in it, and also just knowing it. Doing your little budget for yourself, even if it's hard. I still struggle with that sometimes. But the earlier you start, the more you can sit in it in the uncomfortableness, and the more you can move through it.
That's well said. Okay. So we've got some questions. So thank you for going through that. We've got quite a few questions. Uh,
Okay.
so what's the, let me see here. Let me go. I just got a couple more. Um, when we think about a prenup and postnup, what are some things that should be included? Like we know, well, I would say I would know to think about a maybe the home or a joint bank account. But what are some other assets or liabilities um, or planning tools should one consider in having
For a prenup,
pre or post nup? Yes.
I think the biggest thing for us is your separate assets. Like that is the hugest thing, and how you keep those separate. And when I say that, I mean, folks do think, like you said, of the big things, like, the house and things along those lines. But case in point, one of the things our client mentioned is things like an inheritance. Folks don't think about that because, again, you're living your life, right? And so it works for pre and post. The prenups we write say your inheritance, regardless of if you commingled it, if you can pull out what you put into that joint, we can put in the prenup that that is still your separate. But a lot of times, and just on a personal level, I'll tell you that I'm guilty of that. When my dad passed away, I got my inheritance. I wanted to do some work in our house, um, actually in the backyard, and spent $40,000 in
Mm.
like making the backyard look all nice and pretty. And talk about, I did not have a prenup when I got married, and so when we got divorced and we went to, well, what's this property valued at? I hadn't done. I mean, I was married for a really long time, but that $40,000 that I sunk into the backyard, which is beautiful, I I had to split with my spouse. So folks don't think about that. And while we do recommend doing a joint account, we also tell people to maintain your separate accounts as well. So important. It's not cheating on your husband or wife, it's not keeping secrets, it's maintaining your financial independence.
Independence. So if one other, so thank you for that. Another question. Um, so what if you make less money than your spouse? And this was a question that I received. And I've worked with couples where originally one might make less, and then they ultimately end up making more.
Right.
But either way, that may or may not happen. Um, what and should that person be promoting that's making less or nothing? Should that person be promoting a prenup?
So, yeah, they should, because the prenup can, if they're making less or nothing, the prenup can say in the event that our marriage ends in annulment or divorce, that I am taken care of in this way. Because a lot of times, you know, there's a certain standard of living. You might be making less because the agreement is that you take care of the home. You might be making less because the agreement is that your career is on the back burner. You're not going to move, towards advancement because you're going to be supporting your significant other's career moving forward. And so, yes, the prenup would be a great idea because at that point, if you have a prenup in place that says, if the marriage ends, I get this percentage of the assets or this percentage in spousal support, you have the security of knowing you're going to be taken care of. And if your significant other is on the same page with you about what roles are moving forward in the marriage, it should be something that can be worked out.
That's great. No, thank you for sharing that, which made me think about um, really about a few different things. But I want to ask another question and come back to that to one point you made. Um, what about debt? What about debt and on both sides and how you accumulate it? One of the benefits that I see with having a prenup, especially in what the case we just brought up, is that the person who has less has a vested interest in the success financially of the family, just as much as the person who's the breadwinner, right? Because if we're going to do the split, it needs to be a split of something. Um, but how does debt work in the corporation of a pre or post now?
That's a great question. The first prenup I did in my career many, many moons ago was to protect one party against the debt of the other party. They had no assets to speak of, but the wife who I represented, the wife to be, had an incredible amount of debt. And her fiance felt very strongly about walking into the marriage and at any point being held liable for her debt. So it can absolutely be contracted because at the end of the day, y'all, a prenup is just a contract. So you can contract for protection against the debt. Most times it says whatever debt is in the party's name remains their separate debt. But we've also done it to say any debt, like assets accumulated during the marriage, is divided, 50, 50, 30, 70, however you want it done, or it's, divided pro rata by income. Because think about it. You're going to be buying furniture. You might be buying huge items like, a yacht or something like that. And it might all go in one person's name because their credit might be better, but it's a marital asset, right? And everybody's getting the benefit of it. So you can absolutely contract for against protection, division of debt in the prenup. And it's one of the things that is included in the prenup.
So for a prenup, can do we need one attorney or two?
So you definitely need one to draft it. The prenups are most enforceable when there's a listing of all assets, debts, and income, but it doesn't matter if the other person doesn't have an attorney. For ours, there is a line, and we do give enough time when we're done drafting. We send it to the other person and we say, if you have an attorney, take it to your attorney. You're not obliged to have an attorney review it. We purposely don't use a whole lot of legalese in our prenups. We want a 15-year-old to be able to pull it up, read it, and understand what it means. And that really helps with enforceability, right? They can't say, oh, there was this word persterpes and I didn't understand what it means,
Mm.
right? It's just going to say things in plain English. So if they have an attorney, great. If they don't have an attorney, great as well. We've never had one of our prenups thrown out with a legal challenge. And I'm knocking on wood all over the place. I'm not inviting that into, you know, my stratosphere either.
Mm. Um, when should someone um, consider getting a prenup? So we just got engaged. We're going to plan to be married a year from now or 9 months from now. Um, when should we when should we plan for that?
So, as soon as you've made the decision that y'all are getting married, you should start, if you haven't already, you should start having the conversation about a prenup. Um, we have one that we're working on, believe it or not. They're not engaged as yet, but our client intends to get engaged to his fiance in the next, he says by next month. And so the wedding is not going to be until like the latter part of next year. So it's never too early. My recommendation is always give us as much time as possible. And I love for the couple that they actually get the prenup signed. If they can get it signed months before the wedding, put it away and enjoy your wedding plan and knowing that the finances are taken care of, right? Um, for this particular case, like we work backwards. So we get the date for the wedding if you have it, and then we backwards engineer to give you as much space between signing the prenup and your wedding. I will tell you, we have had people sign prenups on the date of the wedding
Mm,
because it's really never too late. Because once the wedding happens, it becomes a post-nup, which those are not as enforceable as prenups. They're pretty tight too, but they often come up against more objections and more legal challenges.
got it. Um, so let me ask you this question. This will be my last question, or second to last question. Um, if you could give me your thoughts on the difference between a prenup with children already, so they have a child, versus not having a child, and what perspective should one think about? One, if they're not the breadwinner, but two, if she is the breadwinner. So it's almost like a three-part question. Um, Can you give us some things that they should be considering or thinking about?
So the first thing is that there really is not a huge difference in either or prenup in the sense of children, because you cannot contract for custody or child support in the prenup, which means that outside of the prenup, if the wife is not the breadwinner outside of the prenup, given her enough financial resources to make sure it's not like, that movie Beaches where like the mother was super poor and the dad was really rich. So it doesn't create that situation to make sure that she's got enough money to be able to, provide for herself and the child and not be on welfare. But outside of that, and then the flip being true, I mean, the flip of where the wife is the breadwinner, a lot of times it's just a gender role reversal where she might very well be putting things in place where the husband has enough financials. For a lot of prenups that we do for our clients where the woman is the breadwinner, um, transparently, we're making it to where they're not shelling out all of their money to their husbands, and their husbands are living on their backs while they just have to keep like working these high pressure jobs, to provide money and not being able to see their children. So we
Mm,
make sure like that's something it's sometimes not an easy conversation for them to have, and that's why we're here. We'll have the conversation for them to say, no, we want to be able to take 2 weeks off. We want to not have to work late every night. We want to be able to go home and spend time with our kids too.
got it. Wonderful. Well, um, what's the best way for someone to get in touch with you? We have it on the screen, but I like to hear from you. I'm sure there are going to be people who are going to be interested. Um, what would be the best
Sure.
way?
So, like I said, we're in Georgia and there's a QR code that they can scan. And because you've been kind enough to invite us, we are offering that if they contact us before April 3rd, we'll do a complimentary 15-minute strategy session. They can email us at contact us@edwards-lawgroup.com, or they can always call us at 770-723-7211. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. It's Edwards Law Group. And our social media presence is a lot about being educational. So people like know, and we've done things on prenups and things like that. So folks will kind of know where they stand.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking time and going through this. This is such an important topic. We think about building and growing your wealth, as you mentioned earlier about your $20 compounding over time.
Yeah,
All of that stuff can go away if you don't plan properly, if you don't understand tax strategies, if you don't understand risk management. And this is part of that risk management and making sure that you're planning, protecting for something that's unforeseen. And so you went through
absolutely.
it very well. Thank you for breaking it down for people who might not know these things like myself. And thank you for everybody for attending. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Glenn. Appreciate it. Thanks, y'all, for coming. Go grab some lunch and have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.